He tried to ignore the fear that prickled in his throat. It was hard to say what Mum was now. She was so far away from herself, he hardly recognised her. Most of the time she simply sat staring into space. She barely spoke anymore. She barely did anything anymore. In fact, there was only one thing that seemed to wake Josie from her conscious slumber. And that was Dave. Dave's return might have made Elliot feel happier, but for Josie, he'd had quite the opposite effect. Every time Dave came near her, she'd snarl and shout at him. "You're not my husband!" she'd screech. "You're an imposter! Get out of my house!" It was so sad. But, Elliot reasoned, she wasn't herself. She was so confused now, and it was over 10 years since she'd last seen her husband. All the time Dave had been in prison, Josie's mind had been steadily getting worse. She'd remember him eventually and calm down again, he told himself. Of course she would. She had to. "How's Mum?" he asked hopefully. "Asleep," said Dave. "Best thing. Listen, I'm going to make myself scarce today. You know, like we talked about." Elliot nodded. His dad knew best. Dave had explained that coming out of prison was a big shock and he needed time to adjust. Besides, he wasn't sure how the little Mottbury community was going to respond to a convicted armed robber returning to the village, so he'd suggested they keep his return quiet for now. It made perfect sense. Elliot hadn't told a soul. "Good luck today, son," said Dave, putting his hands on Elliot's shoulders. "You've got this." "Thanks." Elliot grimaced. He was going to need a lot more than luck. He wished his dad could stay with him. He could do with his support. But today was not the day to tell the world that his ex-offender father was living with him. Because today was the day that the school welfare team was coming to assess Elliot's home life. According to their letter, this was an informal visit that was nothing to worry about. It was purely to make sure that Elliot had everything he needed to feel happy and safe. Dave said that if the authorities knew that a recent convict was living at Home Farm, it would make a lot of things very formal, give them plenty to worry about, and Elliot would not feel happy and safe if he were taken into care. So Dave was going to stay out of sight in the fields beyond the farm. "Laters all," Dave chirped at the gods, who waved cordially. Dave had taken the news of his son's new life surprisingly well. Once he'd got his head around the fact that a family of ancient Greek gods were living in his home, that an evil death demon would rule the earth unless Elliot beat him to the 4 chaos stones capable of controlling the elements, and that the fate of the world rested on his 13-year-old son's shoulders, Dave had slotted into life at Home Farm with impressive ease. Elliot looked at the gods' frozen smiles as Dave walked outside. He couldn't quite put his finger on it, but if anyone was struggling to adjust to the new arrangement, it was them. Elliot returned to his checklist. "Have all the household devices been sorted?" "Nearly there," growled 2 Feet, sticking out of the downstairs loo. Elliot peered in to see Hephaestus, god of the forge, adjusting the toilet with a spanner. "Dishwasher, fridge, cupboard and oven are all deactivated," he growled. "Upstairs loo don't play Mozart no more, but this one still belts out a bit of Beethoven if you do a number 2. I'll sort it, never you mind." "Thanks," said Elliot. He was relieved that the kitchen wasn't going to spontaneously cook a roast beef dinner and clean it up, but he didn't really want today's visitors to poop to Beethoven either. "I've transformed everything in the shed to look like it belongs on a farm," said Athene, "and Aphrodite has sprayed her positivity potion so that the welfare officers see everything in a good light. Fortunately, it won't be required to work on her outfit. No potion in the world could help that." Aphrodite pouted. "I'm going to check on Hermes," she said. "He always appreciates my unique style." "Especially now he's asleep," muttered Athene, returning to her crocheted spaghetti. "I'll come with you," said Elliot. He needed some fresh air. He followed Aphrodite up to the shed, where the messenger god was lying unconscious on a sumptuous feather bed. Elliot tried to swallow down the sadness he felt every time he saw Hermes. Every day they all, hoped that the messenger god would wake up after Nyx, goddess of the night, shot him with a poisoned arrow at Stonehenge. Since that dreadful night, there had been no sign of Nyx, nor of her sons, Thanatos, demon of death, and Hypnos, demon of sleep. But the messenger god slept soundly on,